Georgia and Notre Dame get set to do battle in the college football playoff quarterfinals in the AllState Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Bulldogs and the Fighting Irish. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. He's Cole Thompson. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast where you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. And this segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com. Use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. The Georgia Bulldogs and Notre Dame Fighting Irish square off in the college football playoff quarterfinals in the AllState Sugar Bowl with a shot at the college football playoff semifinals on the line. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips, and helping me do so, my good friends Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson join me once again. Fellas, what's going on? Appreciate you taking the time and excited to break down this game with you.
Yeah, flashback, 44 years ago, if my math's correct, 1980. That's when Georgia won their first national title with Herschel Walker. My guy Mike Cavan was the running backs coach who signed him. Vince Dooley and the boys. So we get that in the same exact building in the Sugar Bowl. So that's exciting. I'm fired up about this matchup, a true logo brand here. And a lot of unknowns on the Georgia side here. It's potentially the healthiest Georgia's been all year, but also it's the first time Gunner Stockton's getting a start of the game. How does Al Golden defend him? What packages and disguises does he throw at him? I'm excited for that matchup across the board.
We're getting a good game. We're getting a really good game. I think if you walked away from South Bend, Indiana, thinking that Notre Dame was going to lay down dormant against Georgia, you're sadly mistaken. Their defense creates multiple opportunities to give their offense a spark. We get Jeremiyah Love, who's one of the best playmakers in college football, on our national television screens against the SEC. This is a human highlight reel of a running back. They have great kicking and great special teams. I'll tell you what, when I went into this preview, I thought we were going to see Georgia have a good execution. This may be a four-quarter battle that ends up leading in a path to where the SEC, we've already talked about it, there's a lot of people that believe it's been a down year in the conference. They may have some barking room. There's a lot to go ahead and break down with this one, especially now that Gunner Stockton's going to be QB1 for the first time in his career.
Notre Dame fans certainly will invade New Orleans, and the Dogs will be barking down there at the Caesars Superdome on New Year's Day at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on ESPN down in NOLA again at the Caesars Superdome. Guys, the line in this one, really interesting because it started, if you saw the early lines in this one, we did see Notre Dame as a slight favorite. It's now in Vegas. Georgia is a 1.5-point favorite in this football game, even with Gunner Stockton making his first career start. The over-under set at 44. Guys, series history, Georgia leads at all time 3-0. Who can forget the last meeting? 2019. I think that was labeled like one of the biggest games of the decade, or at least one of the biggest games of recent memory. Georgia won that game by a final score of 23-17. And I believe, guys, the meeting before that was the 2017 matchup when Georgia went into South Bend and they essentially took over Notre Dame Stadium.
That was Fromm's first start after Jacob Eason went down.
Yeah, Jake Fromm in that one. Again, they won that football game as well. So, again, like Dave mentioned, this is a logo game, and we thought about the college football playoff and iconic matchups, seeing that red Georgia helmet, seeing that gold dome of Notre Dame. This is kind of what we all envisioned when we thought of great college football playoff matchups. And let's all be honest, after the first round, I think we're all hoping for a classic and not another blowout. But, guys, that being said, diving in the matchup, and we got to start. I mean, the very obvious thing, Dave pointed it out. We know at this point, no Carson Beck, Gunner Stockton, QB1 for the Dogs. Of course, he comes in second half against the Texas Longhorns. I won't say he was great. I will say he was better than guys I think I even expected.
Anybody expected.
He engineered that one long drive, made some really nice throws. Obviously, he's more athletic than a Carson Beck. I think his athleticism, I'm really excited to see how does Mike Bobo scheme that up and use him. And, guys, what the offense looks like. That's going to be the big thing here, right? Because, again, you got a lot of time to prepare the kid, but realistically, you're not going to be able to do as many things as you would with Carson Beck. And for all the things that Carson Beck did not do well this year, guys, I mean, he made big-time throws. Nobody's doubting the kid's arm. You saw it time and time again, week after week. He made those big-time throws. Guys, how much realistically can you ask Gunner Stockton to do? and how much are his legs a factor in this game? That's what I'm excited to see, and even more. Again, how Mike Bobo schemes this up is going to be really fascinating.
How much can you ask him to do is the big thing, but the question is how much are you going to require him to do? Because you may ask him to do 95%, but you may only require 80, or more importantly, you may say, we need you to facilitate the offense, but you got to actually do triple the amount of work because this is how good of a front seven Notre Dame has, how good a secondary Notre Dame has.
Yeah. They're going to put the same amount on his plate as they would back. I mean, you have multiple weeks, and it's not like, I mean, he's been in the same quarterback room. He knows what they're running. He's been in the program before. So I don't think this is a total – now to the second half of the Texas game, yeah, they were probably limited on what they could call because they didn't rep a lot of that with him with the one. So, yeah, you throw somebody in the middle of a game, dude, your menu of plays gets very limited. You have weeks to prepare. Dude, yeah, you're not going to go build an entire offense around the kid. But I also think, like I mentioned at the beginning, Georgia's offensive line is as healthy as it's been all season, even going back before fall camp at the beginning of August. Now, I will say this. This is the difference, and we've seen it within games in our league this year. It's different coming into a middle of a game. It's on the same side on defense. Whether fans believe it or not, I'm sorry to tell you, these defense coordinators don't really prep for backups. They don't unless they're utilized in certain packages regularly. They're not anticipating injuries. There's too much stuff to go over. This is the first time Notre Dame will absolutely 100% know for sure who they get to prep against in this quarter. We saw it with South Carolina's preparation against Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed came in second half against LSU. Blake Baker and them, right, wrong, or indifferent. You can blame him if you want. They didn't prepare for him. It showed. The next week where Marcel Reed was the full-time starter all week, Clayton White and them got a full week to prepare and throw things at him. That's something that Texas did not have the advantage to do, that Al Golden, the defensive coordinator, my former boss at Miami, will have the opportunity to have when in South Bend as they're preparing for this game to throw a bunch of different looks at him that Texas and Pete Kwiatkowski did not have that opportunity to have.
The thing is when you look currently at a place like Notre Dame, my question is going to be, what do you make of it when you don't have enough film on him? Because you still have to realize we've only seen Gunner Stockton play a handful of reps in the last 2 years. And the most that we saw before that game in the SEC championship was against Tennessee Tech. And so what else is out there that maybe is untapped potential when it comes to Gunner Stockton? What more can you trust when it comes to Gunner Stockton with his legs, with his mobility, with his ability to extend plays outside the pocket for second chance opportunities for wide receivers? What more can you see with the play calling that maybe was being drawn back a little bit because of what Carson Beck's play style is? So yes, you have a great game plan and a great overall, I think, baseline if you're Al Golden's defense. My main question is, are there plays that we haven't seen this year from Georgia that are laying underneath the tarmac because of Carson Beck couldn't run them, that maybe you could with a guy like Gunner Stockton? And if that's the case, how quickly can maybe you show your first punch to set the tone for this battle down in New Orleans if you are Mike Bobo in this offense? That's going to be something that I think is really critical. Starting off fast if you are Georgia, because of it only is going to take a few explosive plays. Like go back to that Indiana Notre Dame game. Even though the score says it was a 10-point swing, it wasn't a 10-point swing. You need to get out with that 197-yard run to Jeremiyah Love. He was off to the races. Great execution and great game plan by Mike Denbrock to realize where the defense was of Notre Dame. And they immediately had a 7-0 lead. And at that point, you kind of felt all the momentum shifted inside of the Fighting Irish. That's going to be something that I think is going to be really a tone setter for Georgia in this game. Can you do what Notre Dame did a week ago in South Bend, Indiana?
I think there's a similar thing to kind of, go opposite, play devil's advocate with Bear a little bit here. They've seen a similar quarterback to I think you can, I mean, they see it in their own locker room. Riley Leonard and Gunner Stockton are not that much different. And I don't think Haynes King, both these teams have seen it. I think it'll be, Haynes King may be on, he'll be on both teams inside both their buildings film because Riley Leonard's very similar to Haynes King. Gunner Stockton's very similar to Haynes King. Both these teams played Georgia Tech. I think that'll be interesting in this preparation as well.
The one thing I will point out, though, is that Haynes King didn't play in that Georgia Tech game. That was the Zach Pyron game. But Pyron also has very similar attributes as Haynes King. In that game, he actually led the Yellow Jackets in rushing with 45 yards.
I want to go back really quickly because certainly talking about Riley Leonard and the challenges he's going to present this Georgia defense, of course, major part of this game. But I think Dave made a good point, too, is talking about the the Gunner Stockton dynamic. Guys, Georgia's had 3.5 weeks to get ready when toe meets leather. Last time they played a football game was December the 7th, and they're playing on January the 1st. So I do think that's kind of interesting. Again, we talked about at least coming into the college football playoff and, all throughout when we were speculating what the bracket was going to be. We kind of said, you love to have that 5 seed, or maybe the first round bye is overrated. If there was anybody who needed a first round bye, it was Georgia. To heal up, to obviously get a Gunner Stockton.
The plan was drawn up. We'll see if it ultimately cashes in. You were going to get beat up early in fall camp because you knew you had to build depth and you had a longer season. Maybe you didn't look as good as you wanted week to week. It's been an up and down season, but you are the SEC champs, and you did take 2 losses, but you survived it. You're here. Let's see if it worked out. I mean, Kirby Smart may look like a genius here.
Yeah,
may make people change the way they go into fall camp. So fall camps now, guys, are really soft. It's like, oh, damn, OTAs.
Yeah, the time off, I think, again, is going to help the Dogs.
No one benefited from it more than them.
Because there's always a question, like, how are you going to come off that layoff? Like, are you going to be sharp? I think Georgia's going to be sharp. Like, to your point, they're going to be as healthy as they've been in quite some time. You've been able to lick your wounds, and you've had 3.5 weeks to get Gunner Stockton ready to go. I think the big question with Stockton, it's not going to be, is he prepared to play? I just think, and you guys tell me if you think I'm wrong, I just think it's going to be how much does experience weigh into this? Because you can't coach that. You can't rep that. Like, you either have experience or you don't. And I think getting in the SEC title was obviously, if you were going to have to play him, right, getting him that second half, getting him reps, live bullets against one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best. We've said on these airwaves, we think Texas has the best defense in the country. This is about as good a scenario as you could ask for, like Dave mentioned. So
yeah, also adding too, he's got to have help around him. Receivers can't be dropping footballs in must-get situations.
Trevor Etienne's got to get going in the run game. I agree with you 110%. Yeah,
he benefited from the time off. Receivers got to help. It's not all in Carson Beck in this game. Yeah. Not Carson, Gunner Stockton going in this game. He's got to have help that Carson Beck didn't even get at times from his guys on the outside.
The other thing that's going to be really beneficial is you have to have your defense step on up, because if this is a game to where you cannot afford Notre Dame to have any bit of momentum on the ground that sets up the passing attack. Because go back, there wasn't any explosive plays in that matchup against Indiana until it was way too out of reach. The Bo Collins big time grab and a couple of
the 98-yard was explosive.
But what I'm saying is that like it was on the ground. You don't want to be, if you can take away the run game and you force Riley Leonard to have to pass, that might be your ultimate trump card in this matchup. And again, we're talking about this being a helmet game. This is also going to be a game that's won in the trenches. There was a lot of physical play by Notre Dame against Indiana, against a defense that for the most part was really good against the run this past year. But if you can be able to make them one-dimensional the way that Indiana was able to be one-dimensional against Notre Dame, that might end up benefiting Georgia to where you don't need to put that much pressure on Gunner Stockton.
Do we think Notre Dame's undersized front's going to be an issue here? They are undersized.
I think it could be, but the question is, again, can that secondary step on up to where they have to just be able to run the football? And maybe that's going to be enough to where you get some stops where it's 2nd and 8, where it's 3rd and 6, you force them to pass, and then you're watching. They have done a great job of replacing Benjamin Morrison and Al Golden secondary. Xavier Watts, for my money, he is a first team, I want him on my roster type of mentality type player. Absolute piss missile flying out of a cannon. Cannot wait to see him make plays on Sunday type of dude. That I think is going to be really beneficial to where if that undersized Notre Dame defensive line can just get a few stops, that might benefit Notre Dame. And it gets the ball right back to Riley Leonard, and maybe it's in positive territory.
And Notre Dame's one of the more aggressive teams on first down. Golden's always been aggressive. So
they love to blitz.
It'll be a bunch of run blitzes, I think. It will be interesting. Yeah, the goal, if you're Notre Dame, you're like, let me see what this kid can do in 2nd and 3rd and long. I'd sell out on first down.
You got to force it.
Again, too, there's nobody that scares you on the outside, and they've shown they dropped the football. Maybe they beat you there. Again, that's how, if I'm Al Golden, I'm sitting there like, I'm going to sell out on the run on first down. Again, you got to mix it up. But if they beat me over the top and some of their guys make plays, tip of the cap, because I hadn't seen you do it consistently all year.
Yeah, I think you got to try to set the tone, both these sides. I think, but certainly Notre Dame, young quarterback, you got to force the issue. And again, Cole pointed this out on the other side. There's no question running the football is Notre Dame's strength. Jeremiyah Love is a 1,000-yard back, 16 rushing touchdowns in the season, that just being in the regular season. Riley Leonard with over 700 rushing yards to his credit. So I do go back, Dave, I think it was a great comp. I go back to the Haynes-King game, and I just wonder, mobile quarterback. You didn't see that in the SEC championship with the Quinn Ewers. How much trouble does it give the Dogs, man? Haynes King had a lot of success against them. So
Yeah.
I'm really curious how again, Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, 3.5 weeks to get ready. They watched that Indiana game intensely, of course. So they're going to have a great plan in place. But linebacker play is going to be key for Georgia. I'm really excited to watch the chess match between Georgia's defense and what Riley Leonard and Jeremiyah Love can do in the running game. That's going to be the key. You stop the run, I think you're going to stop Notre Dame for the most part.
Dave also brought up a really good point. You gotta have plays when it comes to your wide receivers if you're Georgia. Because of this secondary by Notre Dame is going to create mismatches on mismatches on mismatches. They're going to win 50-50 contested balls more often than not. This is going to be a physical battle. But Georgia led the country in drops this past year. If you go back and you watch the games where they were able to really kind of show who they were, it was because of their wide receivers were making plays. The Tennessee game is one that I pinpoint. How many drops did we watch from Tennessee's wide receivers compared to Georgia's wide receivers? That was one of the better games to where Carson Beck, Oscar Delp, Dominic Lovett, Cash Jones, Ben Urasic, you throw in London Humphreys, they weren't making plays that ended up being errant balls. And I think that you look at the Georgia Tech game, when they found their way into the end zone, it was because they were set up on great execution on passing plays. And I thought that when you look back at the Texas game and the SEC championship, there was more consistency in the passing attack with Gunner Stockton in the second half than there was in the first half with Carson Beck because there weren't drop balls. If you can stop the rushing attack of Jeremiyah Love and you can put so much pressure on Riley Leonard to have to win with his arm, this may be a moot point. But at the same time, you have got to be able to walk away with first down grabs. It's not just on the ground, it's through the air.
And much easier said than done, guys. Again, Notre Dame done a fantastic job of running the football this season. Again, just going back to that Indiana game for those who may have missed it, may not watched it. Fighting Irish got the 27-17 win. Dominated that game for the most part. They were up 20-3 going into the fourth quarter.
It wasn't
27-3. Yeah, it was 27-3 right before Indiana
but
reeled off.
5 minutes left. People were saying, "Oh, it was a 10-point swing." No, it wasn't. They took their foot off the gas, and it could have been a lot worse for Indiana if Notre Dame wanted to continue to get the explosive plays going in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and just some perspective in that one again. Riley Leonard went 23 of 32, 201, a touchdown and a pick. Jeremiyah Love, 8 carries for 108 yards, a touchdown. Don't forget, by the way, Jadarian Price is another one. He ran for just under 700 yards this season. So, again, Notre Dame ran the football extremely effectively, 193 rushing yards in that game. Riley Leonard went 11 for 30. He had a rushing touchdown as well. Jordan Faison was their leading receiver, 7 catches for 89 yards. Bo Collins just 2 for 18. Jeremiyah Love 2 for 18. Mitchell Evans 2 for 17, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, the Notre Dame defense was suffocating in that one. Xavier Watts, their leading tackler, half a tackle for loss, 10 total tackles. Jordan Clark was good in that game. Jack Kaiser, of course, we've seen him flying around all season long. So, again, this Notre Dame football team, and I know there were a lot of people belittling them and kind of just belittling that game we saw in the college football playoff opening round, the first round, if you will. But a lot of talent on this Notre Dame team. I mean, we saw them go into College Station opening weekend, get the dub over Texas A&M, a pretty solid Texas A&M squad, and now to get to Georgia. Guys, that brings me to this too. Texas handled their business against Clemson, but we saw Tennessee just get thrashed by Ohio State. Does it feel like this is a very important game for the perception of the SEC in 2024?
Yes.
Like this is a very, very big game, I think, for the conference as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, if Georgia were to lose this, the conference would be getting roasted. I think that's fair. But I've said all year, I think that's possible. I mean, there's a legit argument. Notre Dame's been the more consistent team. Does that mean they're the better team? No. But they haven't had the highs and lows throughout the entire season. Now, granted, they hadn't had the injuries that Georgia's had since the start of fall camp either. And the schedule, I think, obviously goes to Georgia. But, I mean, I think there is a case to be made that, I think Notre Dame's consistency has been they've been more consistent this year than Georgia across the board. So I wouldn't be shocked if Notre Dame wins this game. Again, I think Kirby, this isn't one of his better teams. He's had better teams. We've shown Georgia. I mean, Georgia's played with Kentucky before. They came out there and dominated Texas. They've gotten drilled at Ole Miss. Granted, this would be at a neutral site indoors, all different a little bit. But yeah, it would be the SEC would take a hit for sure. But again, I think we've all kind of been I don't know if there's a great team in this league this year, so that would not shock me at all.
The thing that's really important to remind yourselves, guys, is that when people come out and say that the SEC has had a down year, I would agree with that. And what I would also agree with is that when we compare the Big Ten top three and the SEC top three, there's reason to state that the Big Ten has a better top three than the SEC's top three. The problem is that people don't want to go to the next stage, which is what about the middle tier teams? What about the 9-3 rosters? What about the 8-4 rosters? How would they look in a Big Ten schedule? Or how would the 9-3 or 8-4 rosters look in an SEC schedule from the Big Ten? And they would proceed to have to understand the SEC would dominate every single one of those 9-3, 8-4 teams. And we're going to see some of them in the bowl games, regardless of opt-outs, regardless of who is going to be building for the future, regardless of who's coming back in 2025. You're going to see some of those matchups, and you're going to understand why the SEC, top to bottom, is a more complete conference than the Big Ten. But it's all about the front runners. It's all about the faces. It's all about the league's overall demeanor of dominance. You cannot have a bad game if you're Georgia and then say, or blame it on the quarterback. Well, we didn't have Gunner Stockton. We had Gunner Stockton, not Carson Beck. That's not the case. You're Georgia. You bring in 5-star talents that sit and wait on the bench, that have 1 year of starting experience, and they're top 15 picks in the NFL draft. They're players that are rotational guys that are top 60 picks. Like Channing Tindall never started a single game at Georgia. He was a 3rd-round pick. That's Georgia's perception. They have guys that sit, wait, learn, barely see the field, and still make it to Sunday football.
They used to. They don't have that anymore.
But what I'm saying is that that's the perception of Georgia football. And Notre Dame's a team that we question still when it comes to their offense. Notre Dame's a team that we question. We still bring up the NIU loss. We still say that Notre Dame needs to go play in a conference schedule. They need to go join an actual league if they want to be comparable. And the fact that they lost to a Husky squad that was middle of the pack of the MAC in week 2, that should disqualify them from being considered a contender for a national championship. And so if you are Georgia, you want to be able to stick your chest out there. If you're the SEC and want to be able to make fun of Notre Dame and make fun of all these teams that got in the playoff over a 9-3 Alabama or a 9-3 South Carolina, your focal point, the face of your league, the champions, have got to deliver a performance that leaves no doubt. You can't even have a game to where it's a 4-quarter, oh, well, we have 3 interceptions, but we got by because of a game we feel. You got to be able to plant your flag, not just metaphorically, physically in New Orleans, that we are the standard of college football. And the reality is that you may not have that. But at the same time, the Big Ten may not have that. We've watched on multiple occasions this year, every team is susceptible to falling short against any opponent. People want to forget that Oregon nearly lost to Boise State, a group of 5 school. They want to forget that a 5-7 Wisconsin team took them down to the wire. Every situation is different. Georgia's going to have 3 weeks to prepare, but they better look like a team that had 3 weeks to get their stuff together, or else it's going to be a really rude awakening to the conference.
Yeah, on that note, I wanted to make it clear. Our friend Mr. Cole Thompson was one of those bringing up the NIU loss on a pretty consistent basis.
Cole wanted Notre Dame out of the playoffs, man.
For
a while. I will say, though, Cole,
for a while.
He came around. I think Cole believes Notre Dame deserves to be here.
I believe Notre Dame can win this football game by 10 points.
It was a few fun months with after the NIU loss where I think a lot of us, not just Cole Thompson, but many of us out here were questioning.
No, I mean to be fair, I think after the NIU,
one of the worst losses of any college football.
I think because NIU ended up being a very mid MAC team. So to be fair to
not
Cole,
a good team.
I'm defending you here, Bear. To be fair, that was week 2. There was 10 games left. I think a lot of people would have bet Notre Dame slipped up at least 1 or 2 more times.
If you ask anybody out there who has the worst loss of the college football playoff,
it's them.
It would be Notre Dame. Nobody would sit here and go, Arizona State's loss to Cincinnati was terrible because if you could blame that Sam Levitt didn't play in that game. You can't say anything about the NIU loss, especially to a group of 5, 7-5 roster. But again, we got to go back. If we're going to go ahead and give everybody in the SEC an opportunity to re-hit their marker, an Alabama after a Vandy loss, an Ole Miss after a Kentucky loss, I got to do the same thing for Notre Dame. They have been one of the most dominant teams on both sides of the football when all things are clicking since that NIU game. And tip my hat where credit's due. I was wrong. I got to eat crow. I love Notre Dame. I grew up in a Notre Dame household. Notre Dame was a team that I rooted for as a child. They're a team that has the inertia and, more importantly, the drive that can beat up on Georgia. And it will not shock me if this is a game to where we're going into halftime and there are going to be adjustments made by Kirby Smart, or things are going to get ugly pretty fast. That's how good Notre Dame is.
Cole has a Lou Holtz figurine in his back.
I have a Brian
He's a
Kelly
big Notre
one.
Dame.
I have an Ara Parseghian one. I have a
Rudy's
Charlie
his
Weiss
favorite
one.
movie.
Yeah.
Brady Quinn's my favorite quarterback of all time. Trust me. I actually have a Brady Quinn signed jersey. Like, that's how much, and a Jeff Samardzija signed jersey, like, hanging in my childhood.
Cubs signed jersey or
Samardzija's a name.
No, Samardzija, the Notre Dame, the green shamrock old school 2008 jersey.
Yeah, we're getting off topic. Remember the Zibikowski got when they're like,
Zibikowski's my favorite Notre Dame player of all time.
Yeah.
Like, that's how much I love Notre Dame. Like, there's
Irish fans.
Now we're coming out. Now the truth's coming out.
There's a reality to where I have a standard for
Irish Unfiltered.
I have a standard for Notre Dame. I do.
I want to go back to something really quickly that Bear said, and we can lock in some picks. I do think, again, and I have some PTSD from saying this, because I think the last time I said it, I was talking about Tennessee, Ohio State, and that game certainly did not come down to 3 or 4 plays. That one was pretty much over before it started. But I do think this is going to be a game. You mentioned, Georgia's wide receivers, their playmakers making plays. Same thing can be said for Notre Dame, because I do think this is a game that's going to be decided by 3 or 4 or 5 plays. And it's, one of the keys in this game, man, when you get 2 teams like this, I think, is winning your one-on-ones. By the way, do we know Colby Young came back? Will he be a factor, we think, in this game? You think he's going to play? I mean, I'm sure 3.5 weeks to get back into game shape, game speed. I mean,
I'm not going to say anything on a player that currently was dealing with multiple lawsuits outside of the building. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I'm not going to comment on
I just know he was practicing. That's the only reason I brought that up. But either way, whoever's available for Georgia at the skill positions, Trevor Etienne, all those guys on the outside, Dylan Bell, et cetera, Oscar Delp, guys have got to make plays. Again, y'all made that point. I mean, it's just going to be which group of playmakers, I think, around their quarterback, so much focus on them, makes the plays. And that chess match between Kirby Smart, Marcus Freeman, going to be electric. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and lock in some picks, some predictions. I'll start first, and we'll go Dave and then Cole. You look at this game again. We mentioned if there was a team that needed the time off, the 3.5 weeks from the championship game to now, it was the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously, last time we saw them was in Atlanta in the SEC title. No Carson Beck is a really, really interesting dynamic in this game, although you talk to some Georgia fans, and like many other fan bases out there, right? The backup quarterback's the most popular guy on campus. A lot of them think, hey, the better quarterback's playing now, but experience does matter in a game like this. You at minimum knew with Carson Beck, you had a guy that had been through the battles, been through the ups, the downs, what have you, a guy that could make every single throw in the book you could ask him to make. At times, obviously, turning the football over was frustrating, but we saw him heat up end of season and what he could be. How does the Georgia defense, Kirby Smart, Glenn Shumate, are they able to slow down Jeremiyah Love, Riley Leonard with his legs? I think is going to be the key. Of course, if they can make Notre Dame one-dimensional, going to go a long way in them having a chance to win this football game. I do think Notre Dame's a really good team. I think they slipped up early on, obviously, against NIU. I mean, we saw other teams. I saw Ole Miss have an inexcusable loss to the Kentucky Wildcats. I still thought they were a really good team. I saw some, Alabama have an inexcusable loss. Thought they were a good team. So it happens. In 2024, it happens with the parity. It is what it is. I do think Notre Dame is a really, really good football team. I do think they deserve to be here. But, guys, I said this going into the SEC championship, and I'll say it yet again. I may not use the exact verbiage I used when talking about that Georgia-Texas matchup, but, guys, at the end of the day, even with a backup quarterback and Gunner Stockton, which I like his skill set a lot. I mean, again, seeing him in Atlanta, I think he does bring a different wrinkle, a different dynamic to the offense with his legs. I think Mike Bobo and company, they're going to do some different things. But to you guys' point, they got to be able to run the football with Trevor Etienne. Wide receivers have got to make plays. Like, we can't go into this game and say, well, if Gunner Stockton plays poorly, they lose. If he plays well, they win. They got to have other guys step up around him. But I think with 3.5 weeks to get ready, this is the healthiest Georgia's been in quite some time. Nobody needed the break more than the Dogs. I think you will see Georgia come out, put it together. Guys around Gunner Stockton will play some of their best games. I think Georgia's offensive front will fare really well against that Notre Dame front seven. Guys, I think Georgia, Kirby Smart and company, find a way, even with a backup quarterback. I think it's a masterful game plan. Again, when I'm looking at the coaching side of things, give me Kirby Smart every single time against Marcus Freeman and company. I got Georgia winning this game 27-20 over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, punching their ticket to the semifinals. Again, we always talk about do you want the long layoff? Do you want to play immediately? And I think that the answer can change depending on your situation. Georgia needed the break. They got the break, finally got some time to lick their wounds. I think it pays off in a major way. Kirby Smart, Glenn Shumate, great defensive game plan against Leonard and Jeremiyah Love. I think they learned some things from that time facing Haynes King. I think they implement that in this football game. They get the 27-20 win over Notre Dame, punch their ticket to the semifinals.
Yeah, I like that, CP. I mean, a wild time here. We got Gunner Stockton about to make his first start this week. Georgia could be adding a quarterback into the mix as well in the midst of his first start heading into the season here. Just the calendar, the times, wild times here as we head into a massive college football playoff game. I mean, but you got to ask yourself here this question. If you're Kirby Smart and you're on the Georgia side of this, but you have two different strategies you could kind of roll in here, and I think you could make a case and not argue either way. And Kirby typically does this first one. Do you roll in, be real conservative, not turn the football over? Because from top to bottom, 1 through 40, you have the better roster. Again, is it as deep as it used to be? Like I was talking about that with Bear just a minute ago. Like they don't have the depth players they used to have anymore. Kirby Smart's even stated that. So that's not even just me seeing that with my eyes. That's from their head coach. But Kirby traditionally likes to play it really close to the vest when he knows he's better. We see it all the time for the most part. Does he play close to the vest? Do they keep a short leash on Gunner Stockton here? And they're just kind of like, hey, let's get to the fourth quarter. I think we'll win this football game. That's one. The route I would go, and again, I'm not totally opposed to the first one. I think that's fair. I mean, if you're coming out there slinging and he throws 2 pick sixes off the bat and they're up 14-0 for their offense steps on the field, it's a fair argument. I would be a little aggressive, though. I would try to go get up 10, 14-0 off 2 out of my first 3 offensive possessions. I want Notre Dame playing from behind. I want them to try to come play catch up with me, play that style. Which way will he go? History tells me he goes a little bit conservative. He may even do that if they had Carson back. Gunner Stockton, first-time starter, I could see that. The interesting chess piece I really want to watch, though, is like we mentioned earlier, Al Golden's defense. What are they throwing at Gunner Stockton when they have a full week and a half to prepare, knowing it's him? It's not like Carson Beck, he's questionable, but he's been practicing. Like you're having to prepare. I mean, the game plan is Gunner Stockton. And Cole mentioned there's limited tape, but I think they can see a little bit off the Texas tape. Like, yeah, this kid's different. Like he's not just a statue back there. Give Georgia the time off to prepare. Like you mentioned, Chris, no one needed it more in the playoffs in Georgia. Glenn Shumate, Kirby Smart. I mean, how many times, guys, we can say this, how many times does someone really go try it out physical Georgia? Like, it doesn't have. Ole Miss is like the biggest ass whipping I can remember up front that someone gave a Georgia team. And again, Alabama technically owns Georgia. They can start paying taxes in Clark County. Like, I mean, they can't beat Alabama right now. It's their kryptonite. And Alabama doesn't even whip their ass up front like Ole Miss did in that game. But Ole Miss is different. Again, I'm with Cole. I think Ole Miss could win the whole thing if they were in the college football playoffs. They're the most confident team I would be out of those 3 9-3 teams. That's not taking anything away from Ole Miss. Georgia doesn't get out physical. I don't think it's going to be this Notre Dame team. I'm with y'all, though. I think this game's going to be close. I think it's going to be close because, again, I don't think this is a phenomenal Georgia team. They have flaws. They have holes. I'm just real interested to see Al Golden's strategy and what Kirby Smart's strategy is from an aggressive standpoint. I still think Georgia gets out of New Orleans, though, with a 27-20 win. That's going to be my prediction there. I think Gunner Stockton is just fine. I just think this Georgia defense is going to be relentless. I think their time off, and I think just the overall team speed is going to be the difference across the board.
When I want to make this prediction, initially, I figured that Notre Dame was going to be in this game, but I went back and I looked at the numbers. Guys, in almost every single category, this is where you got to give a lot of credit to Notre Dame. They're better than Georgia. And I know that we're going to say, well, the level of competition that they played against, who was really their best win of the year. It doesn't matter. Numbers back it up. They've been better in every single fact. They're number 4 in the country in rushing. Georgia's in the top 25. They're number 11 in scoring. Georgia's in the top 20. They're a top 4 pass defense in the country. And that's a pass defense that's missing an All-American cornerback in Benjamin Morrison. They're still top 4. Georgia's in the top 30. They're a top 5 scoring defense. Georgia's in the top 25. They are better in all stages of the game. And that's a testament to what Marcus Freeman has built in his 3 years in South Bend has taken over from Brian Kelly. It's a testament to going out and adding in the right pieces, not only foundationally, but also the leaders in the locker room, from the coaching staff to the personnel to the quarterback and Riley Leonard. That's buying into an emphasis of what works for us, we're going to continue to utilize to our best advantages. There's 2 areas that they struggle in. passing, Georgia's better in passing. And time possession, Georgia strikes quicker. That to me is going to have to be, I think, the emphasis in this game. If you are Georgia, Gunner Stockton is going to have to take a couple deep shots. I'm with Dave. If you want to be able to come out, set a tone, you got to strike early and you got to strike through the air. I want to see Oscar Delp get involved. I want to see Dominic Lovett live up to the expectations that we thought he was going to be when he transferred on in from Missouri. I want to see a guy, whether that be a young receiver such as London Humphreys, whether that be Cash Jones coming out of the backfield, be that difference maker on the 2nd and 7 plays that turn into first down gains. This is going to be a physical battle. And I want to give a lot of credit to Notre Dame's offense. They have an identity. They know how to win it, and they know how to be the standard of college football and set the tone for a game. You get a couple of big-time burly runs, and then you just go ahead and uncork one to Bo Collins for a 20-yard gain, to Mitchell Evans for a 15-yard gain, and then you run to the outside. You hit the corner if you're Jeremiyah Love, and it is off to the races. But I picked against Georgia almost every single time this year, and it has come back to bite me in the ass. This is not the game to do it. This isn't. As much as I want to believe that Notre Dame is going to make this a 4-quarter battle, because they are. This is just not the game to where you're going to say, Kirby, 3 weeks, the dark eyes, the temperature around the building, the fact that we're going to see, again, another shot of him as the highlights start flashing. And there are his pupils, dialed on in, looking into your soul with pure anger and judgment, saying, trust me, I've heard what the message boards have said. I've heard what you've talked about this team. I understand why you think that we are, quote unquote, not as good. Watch this. It's a 4-quarter game. I think ultimately a late score by Trevor Etienne seals this. I'm going to go 24-20 final score. I think that you're going to watch as you get a kick from Michael Jeter. It be 24-17. They make this close with 3 minutes left. And Georgia, they force Notre Dame to take those 3 timeouts. They get a run from Trevor Etienne. He slides into home. He slides into the semifinals. Georgia secures SEC dominance over a really good Notre Dame team that I think has the inertia to finally get back to the national relevancy of winning a national championship. They are going to be a player moving forward in the college football playoff. And we're going to have to change our narrative when it comes to teams like Notre Dame and Penn State of being, quote unquote, underwhelming programs. They're just not at the same level as Georgia. You see why New Orleans as the final game of the quarterfinals in 2024. And a way to start off 2025. SEC still being the SEC.
And just for the sake of being different, by the way, I'll change mine to 27-21. Dave and I went carbon copy on the score prediction. Great minds think alike, I might add. But we've all got the Georgia Bulldogs taking down Notre Dame, guys. What say you? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see this one playing out in New Orleans with the Bulldogs and Fighting Irish do battle? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, where we get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.